Hello children, so welcome back to my next video. Here I will be discussing about the different aspects of the chapter atoms and molecules. So in the beginning, in this particular video, we'll be discussing about the laws of chemical combination and Dalton's atomic theory. So whenever substances, because in the second chapter of class 9 chemistry, we have learnt about mixtures. Mixture is formed by simple physical mixing of the substances. There is no chemical combination between the substances. But whenever substances, they chemically combine. So when they will be combining chemically, there will be a kind of chemical reaction between them. Then they will follow certain laws, and those laws are called the laws of chemical combination. So basically there are two laws of chemical combination. First one is the law of conservation of mass. So from the name itself we can make out that during a chemical reaction the mass will remain conserved. That means the total mass of the substances before the reaction and total mass of the substances after the reaction will be the same. So the statement goes like this. So according to this law, during a chemical reaction, the total mass of the reactants is always equal to the total mass of the products, because we know in a chemical reaction the initial substances which will go into the reaction are called the reactants, and the substances which you will obtain after the reaction is over, those are called the products. So that will be equal. That is, during a chemical reaction no new mass is formed, neither any mass gets destroyed. So there are two ways of proving this law. So one is a practical way and another one is a theoretical proof. So first let us see how we can show practically. So to show practically, we take a conical flask, and in this conical flask we take a chemical A, and in this flask we hang a test tube, and this test tube will contain the other reactant B. Okay, and this test tube will be hanging with a thread, and this thread will make it secure with a cork so that the test tube does not fall. After that we will measure the mass of this combination. So it will give us, whenever we'll put this on a weighing machine and we'll measure the mass, so that will give us the weight of the products, the reactants. Now what we do, after we get the mass of the reactants, now we will slowly loosen this cork. As we loosen this cork, what will happen? The thread will become loose and the test tube, it will fall into the conical flask, and both the substances A and B will react. The moment the thread loosens and the test tube falls, we have to tighten the cork instantly. The reason for tightening the cork once again is that now whenever two substances will react, it may happen that one of the products is a gaseous product. So if you do not tighten the cork tightly, then that particular gaseous product will escape, and when the gaseous product will escape, then what will happen? The mass will become less, so that nothing can escape from the flux. So we have to tighten this cork. Now when the reaction takes place and the products are obtained, now again you put this on the weighing machine and you measure the weight. You will find that the total mass of the reactant is equal to the total mass of the products. Okay, so what chemicals can we take for reaction, so that because if gases are formed, it will be difficult to control it. So we take such reactants which on reacting will give us such products which are not gaseous in nature. So for that reason we can take, let's say in the test tube we can take barium chloride, and this chemical we can take as sodium sulfate. So there is a double displacement reaction, I'll be telling you. So when barium chloride will react with your sodium sulfate, both are colorless solutions. So when both will react, you'll find a white color precipitate, because this barium will react with this sulfate. You'll be learning in class 10 about double displacement reaction. So it will form barium sulfate, which is a white color precipitate, and along with that a solution will be formed of sodium chloride. So this is the reaction which will take place. So no gases are formed. So these two chemicals are best to demonstrate this particular law practically. Now let us see how can we show or prove this law theoretically. So for example, suppose we take this reaction, carbon reacting with oxygen to give you carbon dioxide. So carbon means burning of carbon, any source of carbon, it can be coal or coke you are burning, and that will give you carbon dioxide gas. Now if we calculate their masses, carbon's mass is 12, so 1 is there, so into 1 that makes it 12 only, and oxygen is 16 into 2. So on the reactant side we will get 12 plus 32, that gives us 44. And on the reactant side, let us see what we are getting, sorry, on the product side. So carbon is 1, so 12 plus, in a compound we need to add all the masses which are present of the respective atoms. That we will be discussing in another video. And oxygen is 16 into 2, so that gives us 12 plus 32, so we are getting that 44 is equal to 44. So hence the law gets proved. Now let us take one more example to show it theoretically. Suppose hydrogen gas is being burned in presence of oxygen, because hydrogen is an inflammable gas, and when you burn any substance, it always reacts with oxygen gas and it will give you water, H2O. Now let us see under this condition whether the law gets proved or not. Hydrogen's mass is 1, so 1 into 2 plus 16 into 2, so that's your 2 plus 32, so that's your 34. Okay, so we are getting 34, it can be 34 gram, you can write it as G. And on this side, let us see on the product side, so it will be 1 into 2, because there are 2 hydrogen atoms, plus 16 into 1, there is 1 oxygen atom, so that's your 2 plus 16, so that makes it 18. So what we find that the mass of the reactant is not equal to the mass of the product. So does that mean that this equation is not following the law? No, it is not so, because if there is a law, there cannot be any exception. Every reaction has to follow the law. Now what happened here was that there is something called balancing a chemical reaction. So here that balancing is missing. Balancing means when the total number of atoms on the reactant side is made equal to the total number of atoms on the product side. So here you can see there are 2 hydrogen, this side also there are 2 hydrogen atoms, but here there are 2 oxygen atoms, but here there is just 1 oxygen atom, so it is not balanced. Now how can we balance it? Let us see, hydrogen plus oxygen gives us water. So there is 2 hydrogen, no issue with that. Now oxygen, there are 2 atoms, oxygen here is 1. So the thing is that you cannot write a 2 here, because that will change the formula of water. Water formula cannot become H2O2. Okay, it has to remain H2O. So the only place where we can place a 2 is in front. Now the moment I am placing this 2 in front to balance, this 2 gets multiplied to this whole molecule. So 2 into 1 becomes 2, so oxygen becomes 2, but at the same time 2 into 2, hydrogen becomes 4 atoms. So again we come back here, because here hydrogen is 2. So in order to balance hydrogen, I place a 2 in front. So now this equation is balanced. Now let us try to find out the mass and see. So it will be 2 into hydrogen H2, 1 into 2 is 2, so 2 into 2 plus 16 into 2. So that's your 4 plus 32, so 36. This side, so we have 2 within bracket, it is 2 plus 16. So 2 into, that makes it 18. 2 into 18 is 36. So we find that the mass of the reactants are equal to the mass of the products. So hence we find that if you take a balanced equation for any kind of chemical reaction, the law of conservation of mass will get proved. Next we come to the second law, that is the law of constant proportion. So what is the statement? So according to this law, when 2 or more elements combine, how they will combine? Chemically, to form a compound, because when the elements are combining to form a compound, the reaction always has to be a chemical reaction. It is not a physical mixing. When they will do so, when they will react chemically two or more elements to form a compound, they always do so in a fixed ratio by mass. That means the mass in which they will react with each other, that mass will remain fixed. Now for example, because I always take easy examples because it is easy to create the concept. So let's take the example of water, because we are all acquainted with water. Now no matter from where you pick up water from the drain, you collect water from rain, you collect water from your reverse osmosis machine, your water filter, wherever you collect water from, you take ice, you take water vapor, formula of water is always H2O. Formula of water is never H2O2 or H2O3 or HO2, never like that. So formula of water is always H2O. Now, so here we find that water, that means two elements are combining, hydrogen and oxygen. So they are combining in the ratio. What is the ratio of their number? 2:1. So this is the ratio of number. So even the ratio of number will remain constant. That means whenever hydrogen and oxygen will combine to form water, they will always combine in ratio 2:1, and that is the ratio of number. But in this law, they are also talking about ratio of mass. So what is ratio of mass? So suppose H2O. So in H2O, hydrogen and oxygen. So mass of hydrogen is 1. So how many atoms of hydrogen are there? 2. So the total mass of hydrogen will be 1 into 2. Mass of oxygen is 16. So how many oxygen atoms are there? 1. So 16 into 1. So the ratio of their masses is 2:16. Now if I take it to the smallest ratio by cancelling with common factor 2, so it will become 1:8. Now what is the meaning of this ratio? That whenever hydrogen and oxygen, they will react to form water, they may react to form something else also, then the ratio will be different. But if hydrogen and oxygen are combining chemically to form water, then they will always combine in the ratio of 1:8 by mass. That means the combination ratio for their masses will be 1 gram of hydrogen will combine with 8 gram of oxygen. If you take 2 gram of hydrogen, it will react with 16 gram of oxygen in order to form water. Now suppose if someone asks you, I am mixing 1 gram of hydrogen with suppose 10 gram of oxygen, then what is going to happen? Chemical combination is taking place. Then you should know the ratio, and you should tell that since there is 1 gram of hydrogen, so it will react with just 8 gram of oxygen. Out of 10 gram, it will react with 8 gram of oxygen, and remaining 2 gram of oxygen will remain unreacted. They will just remain as a mixture. They will not enter into the reaction. So this is the law of constant proportion. So basically these are the two major laws under the laws of chemical combination. Now after that we'll be discussing Dalton's atomic theory. So you know that John Dalton, because when atoms were discovered, scientists were trying to describe how an atom looks like, or what are the properties of atom, how they combine, are they the smallest particles or not, all these things were there. So John Dalton, he came up with his atomic theory in the year 1808, and his theory had certain postulates. Postulates means points. So there are some points in his atomic theory, and with the help of these points, the laws that we got, the law of constant proportion and law of conservation of mass, that can be proved with the help of these laws, or with the help of these points. Those laws can be proved with the help of these points or postulates. So what are the postulates or points of Dalton's atomic theory? Let us see. And we'll also find out that with the advancement of our understanding of atoms, some of the postulates are not totally applicable nowadays. So first point, he said that all matter is made up of very tiny particles called atom. That's very true. Any matter you take, suppose there is a steel and you go on breaking it further, you will ultimately end up with the functional unit, which is called the atom. So same way, suppose there is a copper bangle. Okay, this copper bangle, you keep on breaking it further, and at the end you will end up with the smallest particle, which will show all the properties of copper, and that particle is atom. Beyond that, we'll come to know after this. Second point, he said that atoms are indivisible particles. That means you cannot divide atom. Okay, they are the smallest particle, they cannot be divided any further, which cannot be created or destroyed in a chemical reaction. So this part is very much true, still applicable, that during a chemical reaction an atom is neither destroyed nor it is created. Okay, just like we have found in different reactions, how many atoms will be here, on the other side also same number of atoms will be there, only they will combine in a different way. So the total number of atoms will remain always constant, they cannot be created or destroyed. But this particular portion, that atoms are indivisible particles, that is no longer applicable, because nowadays we know that atoms are made up of even smaller particles like protons, subatomic particles, protons, neutrons and electrons, and even finer particles are there, positrons are there, neutrinos are there, so those are there. So atoms are indeed divisible, they are not the smallest particle, they can be broken into subatomic particles. But yes, the moment you will break an atom into subatomic particles, it will lose all the properties of that particular element. Suppose this was that copper bangle, okay, or suppose if you take iron, a piece of iron, and you take out one atom of that iron, even that one atom of iron will get attracted to magnet, okay, just like a piece of iron. But the moment you break it into respective electrons, protons and neutrons, they will no longer show the property of iron. So the smallest level at which we can see the properties of a particular element or substance is atom. Third point which is said was that atoms of given elements are identical in mass and chemical properties. This is also very true. If you take an atom of gold in India and you take an atom of gold in America, it will remain same. It's not that the atoms will be different. So they are identical in mass, he said, and the chemical properties will be same. Very true. But there is an exception here with the discovery of isotopes, something called isotopes, which we will be getting in the 4th chapter. So isotopes means different forms of the same element. Suppose hydrogen, it is found in 3 isotopic forms. All their atomic number are same, but their masses are different. One has a mass of 1, one has a mass of 2, one has a mass of 3. So when we talk about isotopes, then this particular part, that atoms of given elements are identical in mass, that is no longer applicable, because when we talk about isotopes, then the atoms of the same element, they can have different masses, but of course their chemical properties will be same. Why same? Because chemical properties are dependent on atomic number, that we will be learning later. So they may have different masses, atoms of the same element. Next we come to the 4th point, that atoms of different elements have different masses and different chemical properties. Very true. Like if you take an atom of gold and an atom of silver, both will be different. They will have different masses, they will have different chemical properties, true. But here also there is an exception, that is the case of isobars. Isobars are 2 different elements having the same masses, like for example argon and calcium. Argon is 1840, calcium is 2040. So approximately, because this is not the exact mass, approximately argon and calcium, though different elements, but they are having the same masses. So this part has an exception to it, that atoms of different elements can have same mass. It's not that they will always have different masses, but yes, in most of the cases they will have different masses, and of course since their atomic numbers are different, so their chemical properties are going to be different. There is no exception in that case. Now when we talk about the 5th point, atoms combine in ratio of small whole numbers to form compounds. Very true. Suppose water, hydrogen and oxygen are combining in ratio 2:1. Okay, if we talk about carbon dioxide, carbon and oxygen are combining in ratio 1:2. So what is happening, that when the elements combine, they always combine in whole number ratio. It's never in fraction, and the numbers are, these whole numbers are small whole number ratio. Correct, applicable. But with the discovery of more and more complex biomolecules, like you can take the example of chlorophyll, hemoglobin, such molecules, then this particular word does not fit, because in case of biomolecules or organic molecules, the ratio will be in whole number, the ratio of different elements, but not necessarily a small whole number ratio. The ratio can be quite complex. And the sixth point, the relative number and kinds of atoms are constant in a given compound. This is also very much true, because for example, like when we take water, I told you, no matter from where you take water, the elements present in water will be hydrogen and oxygen, and they will combine in ratio 2:1. So that is what your Dalton said in his theory. So these are the different postulates of Dalton's atomic theory, and few exceptions to some of the postulates. So I hope the concepts are clear. Thank you so much.